Monster creatures went on a rampage, destroying settlement after settlement across Black Land. People screamed at each other to run, to get out before it was too late. In the middle of the chaos, one man still refused to leave. He wasn't going anywhere without his ink tubes and chromatic ore. His friend kept pushing him to move, warning him that staying meant dying right there. Then the word spread. A wave had appeared. No one expected it, not after the fourth black wave came and went without a single warning sign. These creatures were not just monsters. Their size alone defied reason, more like a living disaster than anything that should exist. Ancient civilizations had been wiped out because of them. There were even rumors that just one of them could level an entire city, and now they were here. The creatures kept attacking without stopping. Buildings collapsed in every direction. Bodies were thrown across the ground from the force of each strike. At the last defense fort, soldiers scrambled to fire artillery and slow them down. The tension there was just as bad. A soldier screamed at his unit to move the artillery shells faster before the defense line broke. The captain gave one clear order. The moment they had a clean shot, they fire without hesitation. But it didn't stop there. Gale snapped at Kay and Ellie for staring out the window. He told them to get ready. Red was coming and they needed to move. Red arrived shortly after and immediately ordered everyone to grab their weapons. There was no more time to waste and he led the team forward. Kay stared out the window and felt something was off. The warning sirens reminded her of when the creatures first started gathering near the city. Ellie agreed, but said this time felt different, far more tense than anything before. Then she noticed black ash falling from the sky. It brought back memories of something that had happened before. The emergency speaker blared across the entire area, ordering all pioneers back to their core immediately. The announcement repeated over and over with increasing urgency. People on the streets froze, then started asking what was happening. The roads descended into chaos. Some screamed for everyone to clear the path, others panicked at the sight of black ash still falling from above. Slowly it hit them. The monster wave had actually arrived. A child clung to their mother, shaking with fear. The mother tried to stay calm, telling them the pioneers would handle everything. The crowd surged forward in a panic, screaming at each other to move faster. Someone shouted that the monsters had been spotted gathering at the eastern outskirts. Then a massive explosion hit the area behind them. How was anyone supposed to get out of this alive? A green-haired man screamed at everyone to fall back, to take another route. Something far worse was closing in. When the dust cleared, the creatures known as Black Hand finally came into view. They were enormous, far bigger than any regular monster, and some of them were already carrying massive weapons, swords and axes, ready to destroy everything in front of them. The warning speaker was still going. Kay and Gale watched with frustration. Gale cursed under his breath, questioning what those arrogant people were even doing. Kay explained. Those two were Blaze and Nickel from Radiant's Pioneer Corps, a well-known group that had already built their reputation long before either of them became pioneers. Radiant's Pioneer Corps was the rival of Dawn Pioneer Corps in the eastern region, and now both sides were meeting right in the middle of a disaster. At the evacuation line, the captain kept his unit moving with a tense face. If things continued like this, civilians would die before the evacuation was complete. They had to hold the line until every last person was safe. Then Kay and the others finally reached the battlefield. They tore through the creatures without mercy. The soldiers watching felt a wave of relief. Someone gave thanks, another immediately screamed to push the evacuation faster while the window was still open. From that moment, the pioneers became the front line, cutting a path for every civilian trying to get out. An orange-haired pioneer declared with full confidence that since Radiant's Pioneer Corps arrived, not a single monster had broken through their defense. Then a creature shot forward and slammed into the troops around them. Everyone froze. Kay moved instantly, one clean slash and the monster split apart. The others followed and started cutting down the remaining creatures one by one. At the evacuation zone, civilians kept screaming in panic. Artillery fired without stopping to hold back the wave of monsters closing in from the front. The chaos grew worse as people shoved each other trying to reach safety. Soldiers worked to keep order and keep the evacuation moving, warning that panic would only make everything worse. On the other side, a group of creatures sprinted toward the defense line. The soldiers grew frustrated. Fast-type monsters were always the hardest to deal with. The captain immediately ordered everyone to open fire before they got any closer. A barrage of color attacks was unleashed toward the creatures. The captain then called for Blue to slow their movement, even just a little, to buy enough time for the troops at the forward base to pull back safely. But it didn't stop there. The wave of creatures slowly thinned, but the situation was far from over. Several massive monsters appeared and charged straight toward the last fort, threatening to bring it down at any moment. At that critical moment, the S-rank colorists finally arrived on the battlefield. Camellia stepped forward with a sharp grin, said the situation was too urgent for a long explanation, and announced that as commander of Dawn Pioneer Corps, she was taking temporary command over all Pioneer Corps in the area. She added that a large group of Black Hand had been detected moving toward the forward base. Kay and the others went still. Kay's mind went straight to one name, Sword Demon. How was she supposed to prepare for that? A red-haired man let out a long breath, said they had barely avoided turning this into a full disaster, then apologized for arriving late, especially to the juniors. Kay and the others said nothing. The red-eyed man then acknowledged how far Kay and her team had held on. Camellia added that the Vanguard members had also fought hard to hold off the enemy. At the front line, the troops were starting to break under the pressure. The captain shouted at them to either fall back or hold their positions. Then a sword strike tore across the battlefield. Red launched a brutal attack that shattered a massive creature. It screamed as it went down. Kay and Gale stood there frozen watching it. Then the massive creature rose again. It stretched so high it blotted out the sky. In the next second, the monster swung a massive tentacle and swept through the buildings and troops around it. A hard warning rang out across the area. The giant creature was attacking. Everyone braced for impact. Kay and her team did not fall back. They surged forward together, declaring they would be the shield and hold the defense line. The giant creature loomed in front of them, ready to strike. Without hesitation, Kay and the others charged in, slashing and hammering every monster that came close. From above the battlefield, Sword Demon watched everything. He spotted Kay and saw her as the key to unlocking the Black Witch's veil. He had no intention of letting her get away again. On the other side, Camellia handed control over to Red, who answered calmly that he would handle things there. Camellia herself had already figured out that someone was targeting Kay, so she asked Red to keep watch. High above the battlefield, Twin Viper and Sword Demon observed the chaos below without a trace of urgency. Viper looked satisfied. His plan was working better than expected. He hadn't even anticipated being able to control this many creatures with just a few tubes from Blanc. He laughed, carrying himself as though he were the Black Witch herself, and said the next part of his plan would be far more interesting. Back on the ground, Camellia gave the order loud and clear. Defense of the city was now fully in the hands of the pioneers. She told them to spread formation, flank from two sides, sweep all creatures, then link up with the defense troops to focus every attack on the giant creature. Kay and the others didn't need to say anything else. They moved. The pioneers moved out without hesitation, spreading across the battlefield as the chaos around them spiraled further out of control. Camellia shouted for everyone to hold their ground and stay patient. They needed to stop the Black Hand assault first before pulling back in an organized retreat. The red-eyed man spoke calmly, said he and the Dawn Commander would move to the front line first to hold and stop the enemy there. Camellia answered simply that she would follow from behind. Meanwhile, Kay felt something she hadn't expected. A small sense of relief, not because the situation had gotten any safer, but because Marie was not on the battlefield. A situation like this was far too dangerous for a newcomer to be caught in close-range combat. Marie was elsewhere, supporting the troops with her mechanic abilities from behind the front line. It was a much safer place for her, away from the Black Hand entirely. Across the entire battlefield, orders kept echoing without pause. Every colorist in the area was called in to stop the Black Hand before the situation became completely unmanageable.